first grievance of the WA Liberal Party in this 42nd Parliament. My grievance today is on behalf of residents in the eastern Perth Hills, particularly those living between Chidlow and Wooroloo, who are experiencing an unacceptable reality: the lack of stable, reliable water supply. Before I begin, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the many members of the Chidlow and Wooroloo community who are watching online and up in the public gallery. Your presence today is a powerful reminder of just how deeply this issue affects your towns. Thank you for standing up and thank you for speaking out. These are hard-working families who pay their taxes, maintain their homes and purchase property with a reasonable expectation, often based on verbal or written assurances that they would have access to reliable scheme water. But what they are facing today is not what was promised. Many residents have only recently discovered that their properties are bound to non-standard water supply agreements. In some cases, caveats were quietly placed on property titles without consultation, notice or any clear explanation. These caveats alter the rights of homeowners, often without their knowledge, and typically surface only after settlement or during the sale of a home. The lack of transparency is deeply concerning and erodes public trust. This issue doesn't end in Chidlow or Wooroloo. If it can happen there, what's to stop other suburbs in the Perth Hills from facing the same? Without action, more families could unknowingly purchase homes with no guaranteed access to a basic utility. It is a pattern that must not be allowed to continue. This crisis has two distinct but interconnected fronts. In Chidlow, residents rely on the Goldfields trunk line, a fragile and outdated supply system that we are led to believe is subject to power curtailment agreements. These require Water Corporation to shut down pumping stations during peak electricity hours, typically from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m, and most often in summer. The result is that, night after night, families are left without running water. This isn't about a slightly weaker shower, it's about families unable to bathe after work or sport. Elderly residents, some with complex medical needs, left unable to flush toilets or pour a glass of water. Hot water systems burn out, dishwashers fail and garden hoses run dry. People are hand-carrying buckets just to keep animals alive. Residents have been raising these concerns for over 2 years, only to be told the supply is within operating parameters, and instead of seeing structural fixes, they're being told to spend thousands on private tanks and pressure pumps. These are systems they must install, they must power, they must maintain, and they eventually need to replace out of their own pocket. For just 50 affected houses, the estimated cost to the community over a decade exceeds $617,000. Unfortunately, that's not a solution, it's just a cost-shifting exercise. In Wooroloo, the situation is even more acute. The infrastructure is so fragile that when one resident turns on a sprinkler, others on the street lose pressure entirely. In one case, a serious leak turned a paddock into a wetland because Water Corporation reportedly didn't even know the leaking infrastructure existed. In another, residents were told the water running through their yards was just natural groundwater until continued community pressure forced further investigation. Residents described bits of plastic and sand coming down the line, clogging inline filters and filling their shower heads. Instead of fixing the problem, a pressure reducer was installed, lowering the pressure for everyone without solving the underlying issue. Then 35 households were moved onto non-standard agreements, further distancing the Water Corporation from its responsibilities. This is not just an inconvenience, it is unacceptable. The community is asking for action, not excuses. Specifically, they are calling for a robust, future-proof supply model that doesn't rely on vulnerable trunk lines, consistent water pressure restored in Wooroloo and similarly affected areas, replacement, not patching, of degraded infrastructure, a return to standard water agreements for all affected households, interim solutions such as tanks and pumps to be funded and maintained by Water Corporation, not by residents, and a comprehensive data logging across Chidlow, Wooroloo, Mundaring, Mount Helena and Stoneville, and the surrounding towns to fully understand the scope of this issue, ensure and to ensure that whatever solutions are put in place are for the long term. These residents aren't asking for luxuries, they're asking for access to basic human rights. And one thing that's popping up now in the middle of our housing crisis is that more homes are being built, particularly in Chidlow, but are also planned for Wooroloo. And these property owners are now discovering, as they start to move into their homes or as they start to build their homes, that they too are suffering from these same concerns with water. Minister, I know we've met on this issue and I thank you for your time in meeting with the people of Chidlow and Wooroloo. I appreciate that there are challenges, but the people of Chidlow, Wooroloo and the wider Perth Hills deserve certainty. They deserve access to water. You are the one with the tools and the power of a full parliamentary majority to make this right. Please, please act. Deliver these communities the fair and dignified outcome they deserve, because access to water is not a privilege, it is a right.
The Minister for Water.
Thank you very much.